Welcome to the Dr. Wanda Simmonds podcast. On this week's episode, we'll be discussing post traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. All information that I will bring to this week's podcast will come from the American Psychiatric Association, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, and the Sidran Institute. That will be from 2018's information, and the Veterans Administration Hospital as it relates to veterans. And according to the National Institute of Mental Health, 1 in 13 people can suffer from PTSD. Women suffer twice as much as men, and 70% of adults have experienced a traumatic event in their lifetime. Approximately 8 million people suffer from PTSD annually. Traumatic events can be categorized like sexual assaults, traffic collisions, threats on your life, warfare and terrorism, and even parents who have children who have long-term chronic illnesses. We do categorize PTSD as a mental illness, so we want to make that coincide with May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. Behavioral symptoms can be anything from re-experiencing like dreams and flashbacks or avoidance, meaning anything as simple as veterans who don't go in crowds and don't wish to be around a lot of people. Also negative cognitions and moods, and that can be just a plethora of feelings or blaming oneself and not being able to deal with that. And we can do things like hyperarousal. Hyperarousal really kind of goes along with the military as well. They can have sleep disturbances, they can have aggressive and reckless behavior, and just be hypervigilant. Their feelings of, just always on alert, making sure that they're safe in their surroundings. There are several triggers. Anything can trigger PTSD. Anything from pictures or media events and information, TV shows, even movies. If anyone remembers, there was a movie that was war-based that several veterans went to see, and it triggered them to have a PTSD moment just from watching the events because the movie was so close to what they had actually experienced. PTSD can impair people as well. It can keep them from going to social events. They may not be able to work properly in their jobs anymore. And then it can also debilitate them from just functioning highly in everyday daily activities and life. In the updated version of the DSM, it also shows that PTSD can also be triggered by a traumatic event that applies to police officers and first responders. That's keeping in line with the current events as PTSD and anything that could cause a scary or nervous issue in a patient or person. When we think about the military, we use the word disorder a lot. What we want to try to shift that focus from disorder to maybe injury, because military personnel do not like that word disorder. They don't want to seek help and therefore keep everything inside and cause an issue with them, their family members, and just in their lives as general. This would be a great place to introduce my guest today. He is my husband. This is retired First Sergeant John Simmonds. I'd like to welcome you, babe, to my podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Can we just go ahead? We're going to talk about PTSD from the military standpoint. My husband was a first sergeant in his last 4 years on the military active duty side.
Last 2.5.
Oh, last 2.5. I gave him
2.5.
4 years. It felt like
4
4
years.
years.
It
felt like 4 years. At any rate, he was a first sergeant, and he was in control of all kinds of equipment. He was responsible for several soldiers. Can you tell everybody, babe, how long you were active duty in the military?
I was active duty for 20 years and 3 months.
And we like to put those 3 months on there, don't we? Just so y'all know that's how long we were there. just to clarify, I just want to know and let everyone else know, how did the military treat you? Was it a good time? Was it difficult? And how did you fare from that? And how were you able to stay in that constraint of the military life and those UCMJ orders that we all had to follow?
Well, I would say the military has treated me very, very well. As far as financially and progression in my life is, as people say, going to the next level. From where I started to where I ended up, yes, I have grown a lot with the military. The military has showed me the world. I've traveled. I've also made friends. Some friends I probably wouldn't have been friends with them before the military, but I've got a chance to actually see other individuals and other cultures, and it was a wonderful experience. I mean, I can't take it back. I mean, those 20 years, what I experienced through those 20 years, I don't think anybody could take take those years back or take those experiences away. I think other than the war aspect of it all, of course, experiencing, like I said, different cultures and different people, different places, I probably would have never traveled as much as I did in the military.
And you wouldn't have met me.
And I wouldn't have met you, that's right.
Of course. When you were first sergeant, did you feel overwhelmed and stressed by the position? Can you kind of elaborate on that for us?
Yes, as the first sergeant position, of course, you are what they call you top. You're the head of the enlisted ranks, other than a sergeant major, of course. But for being a company first sergeant, you are in charge, of a group of individuals. In my case, it was roughly about 120 to 130 individuals, and you have to make sure everything is working like a fine-tuned engine. Everybody plays their part. You're overseeing and making sure that everybody's playing their part. So the phone calls late at night when somebody get in trouble, of course. Nobody wants that 2-3 o'clock in the morning.
Having a light malfunction. Okay.
There we go.
Let's clarify.
Hey, things happen. And that's one of the things you have to go through, is like being a first sergeant.
Exactly.
You never know what can come your way. But your job, really, to answer the question, your job is to make sure that unit perform at its tip-top condition. Make sure those soldiers are taken care of, and making sure their families are taken care of. So they're like your kids. So you adopted pretty much young individuals, and they become your children. And we all know that children can be very stressful at some time.
Yes, they can. So the demands of the position, did they create any kind of emotional toll or cost strain on your family and daily life activities?
Yes. Like I said, the stress of that position, it comes with a sacrifice. In my situation, it was the sacrifice of time with my loved ones, with my direct loved ones, with my family, even my wife. Even though we would do military and we both were leaders, there was time that I can't get back from them, because I adopted a second family, which was the Army, and that was the mission. And your immediate family, they sacrifice, the times where dad is not around,
right.
And they make an ultimate sacrifice as well. So we can never discredit that. But that's the real stress of being away and not being able to, as they say, be with your family every day and give your family your total 100%. You kind of give them a little bit, but you're giving the military more.
Mm-hmm.
It's a self-serviceness, as they say, type thing.
Correct. So I know this is the month of May. Mother's Day passed a few weeks back, and I know Mama Jean, she's my mother-in-law, my husband's mother, Jean Patricia. Her birthday also just passed, and it was a sad time. My husband tends to kind of be very sad. I give him his space so he can reflect. I know during the time of that time when your mom's birthday comes around, can you kind of elaborate what happened and what causes you, not just of her death, but what causes you to have sadness during that time?
So, my mother, Jean Patricia Simmonds, which is ironic that we both have the same initials, JPS.
I'm sure she did that on purpose.
Yeah, I know.
She did that on purpose.
But rest in power. She actually was born on May 14th, which is close to Mother's Day. And then 68 years later, she left the earth on the same day. So the situation with that would kind of got me, you can say the traumatic experience in this situation is, the story is that I was stationed in Virginia and I got orders to be stationed in Kansas. While I was in Virginia, of course, I was raised, was born in Virginia. I went to my mother's VA appointments. She found out, the doctor notified her she had only a certain amount of time on this earth. So just like any soldier would do, I mean, there's a process in the military that you have to take when certain situations come like that. I did a compassionate assignment for stabilization to keep me in Virginia. That was only for a certain amount of time, which was 12 months. During those 12 months, of course, I try to take my mom to appointments and, try to comfort her as she was going through this. But that 12 months came to an end. So now it's time for me to go to Kansas, to my next duty station. I tried to put in, go through several different processes to stay in Virginia, but like I said, there's only so much the military can do because the mission, of course,
always comes first.
It always comes first.
Yeah.
So I went to Kansas, and I'm in processing in Kansas at my new duty station. Don't know anybody, it's new faces. Everybody goes through this. You're nervous. You're new unit. There's a lot of things expected of you. But 3 days after I was there, I got a Red Cross message telling me that I need to come back to Virginia because my mother only had probably a day on this planet, on this earth. So the unit tried to do what they can do to fly me out, but that was, and being the only child, and your emotions and everything is going crazy. I was like, don't worry about it, I'll drive.
Right.
So I hopped in my vehicle and I drove from Kansas all the way to Virginia.
Almost nonstop.
Almost nonstop. Actually, I stopped. Outside of, I think it was West Virginia, I believe. And when I stopped outside of there, it was kind of windy for some reason, and I was like, let me lay down for about an hour and continue.
Right.
But the car just kept shaking like it was a sign from God saying, wake up, you gotta
Let's
go.
Let's go. Yeah, get going.
So I hopped back in the car, got to the VA medical center. She was in the hospice there, up in Richmond, Virginia. And unfortunately, I missed her they say roughly about an hour and a half I missed her.
Which caused you to have a lot of guilt.
Yes. Yes, I did. I felt a little guilty because I couldn't be there to at least comfort her as she was making the next journey in her life. The spiritual journey. So that is the trauma that I deal with around Mother's Day. Not only missing a parent that is no longer here physically, but and not being able to say, hug her and say, Mom, I love you, I miss you, you know. That was probably the worst traumatic part of it, is not being there and not being able to be with her in those last days, those last moments.
I know Mama Jean, you know, she was also a military veteran from the Air Force, and I know that she knew that you had done everything you possibly could to stay with her as long as you could. So she knew how much you loved her, and she loved you the same way. That those feelings were always reciprocated, babe. So we're gonna move on. I know you deployed. We did suffer through some deployments.
Yes, we did.
And can you just let everyone know which campaigns did you deploy to? I know you've done a war zone and a peacekeeping or humanitarian mission. Can you tell us, you know, where you went and what you did?
Alrighty. So my first deployment, when I was when I came in the military, I got one of my first deployment. I was stationed in Germany, and at the time in Germany, this is early 2000s. The big mission was Kosovo, and of course Bosnia. Bosnia and Kosovo was the big deal. But I was stationed in Kosovo, humanitarian mission. First time ever on a deployment, you know, scared out my wits. All you hear is deployment. You think you're gonna be hearing gunfire and all this stuff is going on. You know, it's a new experience. So, and you're away from home, you're away from family, and I was way across on the other side of the world anyway.
Right.
But I had a couple of friends who actually went on a couple of deployments who kind of helped me through that. And actually, Kosovo wasn't too bad. I mean, did we do a lot of missions outside the as they call wire or the fob or the base there? Yes, we did. I was a optician at the time, so we helped a lot of the villagers, and we actually donated eyewear to them. So that was pretty cool, pretty interesting. So Kosovo wasn't too bad. Kosovo, I mean, they had, you know, accidents, but not really like, you know, you had to kind of watch your back and that type of thing.
Right. Afghanistan's a whole different ball
Afghanistan.
game.
Now when I got sent to Afghanistan, of course we was in the middle of, you know, two wars. The U.S. was going through Afghanistan and Iraq, so there was a lot going on. I mean, you know, terrorism was on the rise, you know, and everybody was worried about wearing that uniform and wearing that flag. And they had incidents. I mean, by the time we got there, they briefed us on certain incidents that were going on. I mean, it's hot, it's muggy, it's dirty. You're constantly watching your back, sandstorms. So there was a lot going on in Afghanistan. And even though I was stationed on one of the biggest FOBs there, I had supply, because I was the logistical side of the unit. I was the head of this company supplies. We had 7 different companies underneath us, and I was in charge. I was the battalion S4 for the battalion. So I went all around different parts of Afghanistan to actually make sure the company supply sergeants were doing their job. We did inspections and make sure they were up to code, I guess, if you want to say, and their daily duties or monthly duties or weekly duties or whatever you want to call it. Now, in Afghanistan, I was with an EOD unit.
Explosives and ordnance.
Yes, explosive and ordnance disposal unit. So that unit actually is one of the units that some people have seen the movie Hurt Locker.
Yeah.
It kind of gives a example. I mean, you know, in fictional sense. I mean, there's some things some of those guys are like, okay, that's not what we. But it gives you kind of, for a civilian, somebody who's not in the military, you kind of get an idea of what EOD kind of goes through. But their life expectancy in that field is like anywhere from 8 to 10 years. I mean, during the time of Iraq and Afghanistan, I mean, they were always checking roads for bombs. You know, they had the engineers coming in and all that. So they had a very important piece. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like when I was there on a daily, weekly basis, we was doing memorials and ceremonies for guys. I mean, we worked with the Air Force. It was just not just Army, because you have Air Force and Navy who has EOD, mm-hmm. but we would do a lot of ceremonies on these guys. I mean, they were really getting banged up out there, mm-hmm. and a lot of those guys were personal friends. I mean, you when you go down to a deployment, you kind of embrace people that you probably didn't even talk to when you was in the States, but y'all become family because y'all wearing that uniform. So you can see somebody today and they could be gone tomorrow. Unfortunately, my most traumatizing experience in Afghanistan was actually one of my soldiers that was underneath me. He was an NCO. He was a staff sergeant. I'll leave his name out, so because
to protect him,
and his family. Mm-hmm. But he was our maintenance NCO, mm-hmm. and he decided to take his life while we were down there.
And you found him, is that correct?
Correct. Me and several individuals, we were looking for him. It was an early roll call that we usually do, and we were trying to locate him. And when we found him, we witnessed the tragedy, mm-hmm. Which caused a lot of trauma, emotional and mental trauma on not just me and my battle, who was a first sergeant for us at the time, and our company commander was actually my company commander and my OIC for S4. We all experienced a lot of emotional guilt, because just like with my mom, we felt like, what could we have done to have him prevent what he, what was going on internally with him. I mean, I talked to him the night before, and everything seems fine. I mean, it seemed like everything was okay. He was laughing and joking, and we both were. And then the next morning, like I said, people are here today and gone tomorrow. The next morning, he's gone, fatally. So I still live with that on a day-to-day basis. I feel guilty. What could I have done? And sometimes I won't say use, but the thought of that, now I think about my kids, my family. I constantly ask the time we're living in nowadays, kids go through a lot emotionally and mentally. So I think about my kids. I try to, keep that verbal communication, me and my wife, to try to find out what's going on with them, mm-hmm. To make sure they're okay. So, the Afghanistan was a different function, and it affected me in a lot. And actually, it was about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Me and my wife was in Lowe's, and I just broke down crying. I think about friends and family, and and then the op tempo of being in Afghanistan. My communication with regular folks on a daily basis is kind of standoffish. I'm always out. Sometimes I don't sleep. Sometimes
a lot of times you don't sleep. A lot of times you don't sleep.
That's true.
Okay.
Sometimes I walk around my house like I'm back in Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're fortunate and blessed that we do have a little bit of property, and sometimes I go around just to make sure everything is locked up and okay and everybody's secured, like if I was, in Afghanistan. Yeah. So I go through this disconnection sometimes when it comes to the world, or my surroundings as far as other people. And I know I'm not the only one. I know there's other battles, or soldiers like myself who go through that, So hopefully this will help you guys. Hearing my story will help you guys.
So I guess to segue from that, to segue into my next question, I would like to know. I know we use the VA a lot, and that's how we get our medical care. The Veterans Administration Hospital, I know that in the beginning they did provide you with a mental health MD or NP who was trying to help you via Skyping and having you talk out your feelings. How do you feel the VA has helped, or did they help? Is it still ongoing? And can you just elaborate and give your opinion on how well you think the VA has helped you post-retirement?
So the standard when you retire from the military, of course, you're not a soldier anymore. It's just like being an NFL player. You're not in the game anymore. The only difference with the military is we have the VA system. We try to assist. You have certain sections that try to assist whatever needs you have. So when I got out, retired, I didn't really get out. I retired. That's the term. I retired after 20 years and 3 months. I retired from the military, and here I go. What a lot of soldiers go through is, what's the next move?
Yes, like how do you think you could let others know about reintegrating themselves back into society after deployments and military life?
Correct. So I was kind of my mind was fuzzy. I had one plan. I'm not going to go into that. I had a plan that I was trying to do that didn't work out because of certain situations. So now here I am, a little depressed because I was I was the top. I was the man. Everybody came to me. Hey, Top, what are we supposed to do? Hey, Top, this. Hey, Top, that. So now my sense of being, of purpose, of, being the one that everybody comes to, that all shuts down. And in that depression of feeling like, hey, look, I'm not that person that everybody comes to, even though I have my family. I know people are like, wait, don't you got your family? Yeah, even though I had my family, but I was still institutionalized from being in the military. So the depression led me to go and ask for help, and reach out to the VA and try to get assistance and just talk to somebody. I had my wife to talk to, but sometimes, you need that outside source.
You need someone more objective.
Correct. So the VA did benefit that. They set me up with somebody who I could talk to. They even tried to give me medication just in case I have certain situations that arrive. So all that is in the play. The thing is that we have a lot of our guys who, depending on where they live, because like me and my wife, we don't live next to a military installation. So now I have to, the problem is I have to literally drive like an hour away from my home to get any type of medical assistance. And that could become an issue sometimes, especially if you have I know they have the emergency hotlines and the crisis hotlines, but sometimes just being on the phone is not enough.
Right.
Sometimes we need that individual right there. So I could say that's the only dilemma that me and my wife go through as far as the VA and medical needs, is the distance from where the actual medical facility is. But did the VA do what they were supposed to do? They did. They made sure I had the professional help to try to assist with anything else was going on with me.
And do you think you're doing okay now?
Yes. I would say, did the VA play its part? Yes, they did. But I think the main thing is having the family support. The family support, without that family support, it's very rough. We have a lot of my guys that come back. And when I say my guys, you guys who are just like me, we have a lot of us who don't have the family support, who's not fortunate and blessed like me, who have a wife that supported or was also a military member. Because some of us do have wives, but they were civilians and they don't really understand. They try to, and you know. But that is the nutshell. And then right now we have one child in the house. I mean, we do have 6, but we have one child in the house,
Yes.
and she gives me a lot of support. I mean, God bless her soul. Every time, hey Dad, you okay? She checks on me. She gives me hugs. So that's been the biggest support and the biggest, I say, therapy, I guess, or what would you say? How would you say? Yeah, I guess therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's been what I've used for myself. Now, for certain people, that might not be, that might not be enough. But hopefully, for those who are similar to me and have similar situations to me, if you have that family support, that is what really is the big beneficial to getting help. It's the family support system.
Well, babe, I want to thank you so much for being on my podcast, sharing your stories and experiences today. And I hope that hearing my husband's message will encourage other veterans and just anyone, civilian or veteran or active duty military, to seek help if they're going through a mental health crisis. Currently, we have approximately 354 million veterans who have survived war, and they have PTSD or depression. And for anyone who feels like they may be suffering from PTSD or even depression, or just having some kind of, blue moments where they don't feel, up to par, feel themselves, I suggest you seek help. I plead with you to get help. The PTSD Foundation of America, the number is 877-717-PTSD or 7873. There's also a lifeline for vets, and that number is 888-777-4443, and that's for veterans and their families. And of course, we have our Veterans Crisis Line at 1-800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. Okay, make sure you all are looking for anyone who can help you to get help you need, because sometimes we think we know where to go and we don't always. I want to thank everyone for listening. I appreciate your time. This is Dr. Wanda Simmonds, and this was Nursing A for Punks.